My name is Marcus Ellison, and that morning I stood in front of my hotel room's gilt-framed mirror and made thick off of my blue suit for the third time with my 52-year-old husband, Arya, as a father. So too thought to Isabel, I paid for every part of this wedding. The French lace dress she swore was from when she saw the custom sculpture in the shape of a swan. She laughed about how she used to want one as a child. I remember the 5-piece string quartet that was brought in from out of state, as well as her fiancé's ring. It was a platinum band with hand-carved engravings that I paid for in quiet payments. But the air in my lungs felt thinner. Every step I took towards Langley Manor, which was the spot, was beautiful. It looked like it came straight out of a wedding magazine cover. Sunlight came in through the large glass ceiling and hit the chandelier, spreading diamonds au vase. The light hit the marble floors. White orchids grew on each table, spilling over the gold pots and making everything shine. People moved between our beds like well-dressed ghosts, and I should have felt proud, but instead, something sat there. It wasn't just old age or worries making me feel heavy. It was a weight I couldn't put my finger on. I got there early, as I always do. I checked with the chefs as a matter of course to make sure everything was okay, talked with the photographer about getting the right shots of the dance between the father and daughter, and with the event planner to make sure everything went as planned. It was meant to be a great day for her. I hovered over her gift. They sat near the entrance hall and looked through the printed program that was neatly stacked on the welcome table for a while. The cover was a beautiful ivory color with gold writing. I opened it and looked over the list of thanks to Rhea Ellison, mother of the bride, and my name, as the father of the bride, wasn't there, but Patrick Monroe was. I blinked and looked again, but there it was. It didn't say anything about me under contributors, special thanks, or even extended family. I walked over. The family table was in front of the seating chart, which was placed near the door on an ornate board with swirls and calligraphy, and in the middle, Rhea, Isabel, and Patrick were all clearly marked. I looked at every table. After that, there was nothing. My name wasn't there. I frowned. Sure, this was an office mistake that the printer missed, but when I asked the guard, a college kid with a smooth back told me it was Ayaz. I sat down. He looked at his list and said, "Sorry, sir, there's no Marcus Ellison." It didn't feel like a slap. Slaps are quick. This was a slow, curling pain like cold. I stood there with the program still in my hand, like air slipping through a cracked window that you don't notice until your whole body shakes. I could feel the ink on my fingers and hear laughter coming from the bridal room above. Then, I heard a chorus of Isabel's high-pitched squeals. Must have been her showing off her dress, the dress I bought, and the dress she cried over when the store said they couldn't make it in time, even though I had asked for help, paid rush fees, and begged. But now I wasn't getting it. I took a seat near the back, one of the few that wasn't already taken, and watched the guests. I was even named as her father. Rhea's aunts from Charleston and her mother, Dolores, in a soft blue dress poured in. Patrick wore a bineer to match Isabel's bouquet, and smiled like he owned the place. Isabel wore a dress and hat that matched it, was subtle, but it sent a message. I knew what message it was because I'd seen it before. It was the kind you whispered when you didn't have the guts to say it out loud. "You don't belong here." The ceremony started, and Isabel walked down the aisle path shining with that kind of happiness I used to think I helped build. Rhea wiped tears from her eyes and squeezed Patrick's hand. No one looked back at me, and I wasn't even asked to walk her down the aisle. That honor had gone to both Rhea and Patrick. As if I were a footnote they decided to ignore. I put on a brave face for the pictures and the crowd, and I sat through the service like a guest at a stranger's party. I clapped nicely when it was over. And during cocktail hour, I stood by the decorative fountain with a drink that I didn't finish. When the gathering started, everyone took their seats. But I stayed where I was. Someone still needs to notice and fix the back. Maybe Rhea will call me over, or Isabel will wave. I didn't do anything, just watched her dance with her new husband. Dorothea came up and said, "Lovely event you." As Rhea laughed with her friends, with a tone that said, "Thanks for paying. Now leave." I stood there, still and before the toast. The crack could be seen. That's when it became real. But her toast goes to the next person. At this point in time, I was just a man in a suit who paid for a fairy tale that he had never written. Champagne was poured into small, crystal flutes that sparkled under the lights. At the gathering, I held mine lightly, and the stem slid between my fingers. The sound of glasses clinking could be heard all the way down the hall. I wasn't laughing along with the music. I had moved to the edge of the room to be politely away from the party. I told myself I would wait and hope for something, a nod, a wave a chance to join in as I let them shine. I couldn't help but feel heavy with the truth. I didn't know where I fit in anymore. The MC tapped the mic and asked for toasts. The room fell silent. Each person looked at the head table with interest. Isabel stood up, shining in her dress. She had curled her hair and put it up with clips that sparkled like stars. She looked older than I remembered. Now that she was more of a woman than a girl. The flower girl gave her a mic with a small bow. With a smile, Isabel took it. "Thank you all so much for being here today," she said. Her voice was smooth from practice in front of a mirror. She said, "Today has been more than I could ever dream of, and I couldn't have asked for a better day. Done it without the people who really shaped me," she said. She paused. My grip on the glass tightened. Maybe this was it. Maybe Shay stood a little taller first when I was going to say my name to my mom for being my heart, my compass, and the strongest woman I know. She made the room clap. Rhea smiled and put her hand on hers. She smiled softly at her and then spoke. "About the man who has been like a real father to me, Uncle Patrick." The words hit him like a slap, but not just one. They came at him quickly and clearly. There was a moment of stunned quiet, then a few gasps. My ears were ringing, but I couldn't move. They couldn't even blink. "And DeMarcus," she said in a sudden, light voice. "Oh right, you're not my really forgot to add your name to the guest list, Dad." She laughed, and a high ringing sound meant a charm, but it wasn't one. Hurt me, and then other people laughed, too. At first, there were only a few ripples that turned. Rhea laughed behind her wineglass as she turned into a wave. Her cheeks were red, but not from shame. Dolores, on the other hand, laughed and clapped her hands as if it were the right ending to a joke. Openly laughed. While others looked around awkwardly, not sure if they were allowed to laugh but joining in anyway because the bride was laughing, and I stood still. My face drained of blood as my smile stayed frozen. It was more of a reaction than a choice, and my body stiffened from practice, the kind of kindness you put on like armor at funerals or board meetings. To raise my glass a little to look like I was sipping because I didn't trust myself to speak. The grin on Patrick's face made her want to think she had messed up and was just nervously trying to be funny. I thought he was telling her a joke when he turned his glass towards her. They had practiced this. Maybe not the words, but the tone, the meaning, and the erase. For a second, Rhea looked at me. From across the room. Her smile dimmed for a moment when she saw me, and then she turned away. I thought about Isabel's words again, over and over in my head. Not my real father. How many times had I lied to her? When Rhea was too tired to move. How many scraped knees had I fixed? How many school projects had I stayed up late to finish? I remember one time, when she was 11, she called me from school crying because someone had told Harry drove there during a work meeting, smashed through the front desk, and took her out. Stepfathers didn't count. I told her while we were eating ice cream. Blood makes you a relative, love makes you a father. It looked like she had forgotten that too, because the toasts went on with more laughing. I didn't hear any of the stories because I was still thinking about her voice and how she laughed after the jab like it was some kind of joke. Cute inside, joke about how I hadn't given up anything for her and hadn't bought the microphone she used. Make fun of me. I took a step back and then another, but no one saw that I was furniture. That room had an ATM dressed in a suit. I went to the side exit. Andy heard cruel laughter behind me as I pushed through the door and into the poorly lit hallway. I let out, taking a deep breath. I realized I had been holding my chest tight for years. Not just because of the shame. There was a mirror on the wall outside the hall to make something that could be thrown away with one toast, one of those old fancy things that's more for looks than for use. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the guy staring back at me. I looked blank and worn out, but not angry yet. I leaned against the wall to get my thoughts together as people walked by. I couldn't go back in while people were talking about the cake or the next dance set. Not yet, maybe never. What scared me the most was how calm I felt. Not angry, not broken, just done.